We are back. Boston has entered the chat. Hour 2 coming to you live from our Salem 5 studios, where it's going to shock you. We're going to do a lot of this in the days and weeks to come. Rejoicing, basking in all that was a very successful Patriots season, even though it didn't end the way we wanted it to. Casey, Travis, Adam, bye to Joe. Drive safely. Ian Rappaport has tweeted. Let's start with this. Just a moment ago. Terrell Williams, who of course was largely due to a cancer diagnosis, uninvolved with this team, at least on the sidelines, I'm sure from afar, was very much a part of game planning to the degree that he could be. He is being moved, the defensive coordinator in title, to a high-ranking role on the staff. That is according to NFL Network. So Williams, now cancer-free, by the way, most importantly, will have a new role within the front office, coaching staff, however you want to look at it. But bottom line is defensive coordinator, that is now a vacant position on the Pats staff. Inside linebackers coach Zach Kerr, who, as we know, held the de facto title throughout the year.
Did a good job.
Called plays, did an excellent job, obviously. And he is
somebody who can have some insight on that.
Top candidate on the position. And we will find out how realistic it is that he ends up getting that bump. Let's bring in our good friend Evan Lazar, who is very close to this situation. Why? Patriots senior writer, host of the Patriots Catch-22 podcast.
Amen.
Ev, how we doing, bud?
I'm doing great, guys. How are we? And gals.
Thank you.
So, well, let's start with this. Did you already know? Was there already some conversation behind closed doors in-house about this move?
No, not really, to be honest with you. But I think we all kind of assumed that they were going to have to shake up the coaching staff a little bit because of the great job that Zach Kerr did as the Patriots de facto defensive coordinator, especially in the postseason. And I think he just grew into that role and took it by storm. And Mike Vrabel compared it a lot to a player, a player getting an opportunity, whether it's due to injury or whatever, and then stepping in and playing really well and kind of taking the bull by the horns. And I think that's exactly what Zach Kerr did, just the coaching version.
I mean, I think they did right by both guys, personally. Terrell gets to stay within the organization, as Adam laid out. And now Zach, I would think, gets, officially a shot at this position, although we'll see. Mike Vrabel seems to be kind of mum about, hey, we're going to discuss some things internally and figure it out. But this feels like it's going to be his job. Evan, I think they did right by both guys, don't you?
Yeah, and Terrell Williams, he held the assistant head coach title with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee for a period of time. So I wonder if that's going to be the title that he eventually gets. But I just think that, the way the defense played down the stretch, and especially in the playoffs, really flummoxing 3 quarterbacks in a row on the way to the Super Bowl. And even in the Super Bowl, although Seattle landed some punches, the Patriots held them to one of their worst offensive performances of the season on just like a play success rate basis and a yards per play basis. So they played they kind of did their part in the Super Bowl, for the most part, defensively. So I thought this was the right move and one that we all were kind of hoping in a lot of ways that they were going to make.
Yeah, definitely hoping, because to jump off of that for just a second, you see it when coaches go through something like this. Good that he's coming out on the other side, the positive there, but stress can kind of maybe sometimes set guys back a little bit. We saw Bruce Arians try to overcome a number of opportunities when it came to his health, so speaks highly to the organization. Look, I know we jumped right into the coaching conversation, but Evan, it was a whirlwind of a season. We couldn't use the word unexpected, overachieve, all the words that kind of inflate the performance of this team.
Cinderella.
But just talk to us about your personal feelings and emotions right now, kind of coming down from the previous 2 weeks of what the New England Patriots were and who they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a bunch of different emotions that come from a loss like that on Sunday. Obviously, you're disappointed by the way that they played. And I think the number one thing I keep coming back to is I just didn't feel like they gave themselves a chance coming into that game from a preparation standpoint. It just felt like Seattle was more prepared, more, kind of ready for the moment, ready to play in the game. And that was obviously disappointing, but you can't lose sight of the fact, and I know the line that Vrabel keeps repeating is that we're 307 days into his tenure and into this program, and that's definitely accurate. And they exceeded expectations and then some by having a season like this. And now you hope that they laid the foundation of what's to be a very successful era here with Drake May and Mike Vrabel. So is it the outcome that they wanted? Of course not. But now that it's, the dust is settled after a couple of days, I think you can look back on it and say, well, if that was just step one or year one into this whole thing, if they can continue to build on that, then hopefully they have bigger things ahead and championships ahead. I'll just say this too, that was easily the most together, the most fun, the most vibrant locker room that I've ever covered with the Patriots. And that goes back to 2018, Brady's last couple of years. They were good. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl in 2018, but they were a good team that was clearly not exactly into it, if that makes sense. They were just great. They just had Brady and they had Gronkowski and they had Edelman, and they were just a really good football team. This team was different. They were a special group, and that's going to be hard to recreate, but hopefully they're better in terms of their roster and things like that moving forward.
Well, let's turn the page to 2026, and before we look at the pieces on the field, I do want to go back to the coaching staff. We know that Mike Vrabel obviously continues on at head coach, but beyond that, for instance, Zach Core, is it a formality in any type of search in your mind, or is he definitely going to be the defensive coordinator? And from there, any other changes you see along the staff?
Yeah, I would assume that one's a formality. I don't have any inside information, but I think that's probably safe to assume why they made this move with Terrell Williams is to open up that spot for Zach Core. So they might have to go through some of the league protocols in terms of opening a search and the Rooney Rule and all that different stuff. But I think we all can see where this is headed with Zach Core being the DC. In terms of other losses on the staff, that's really going to come down to if guys get offered better positions. Robert Kugler, their assistant offensive line coach, he's going to Pittsburgh as their tight ends coach. That's a promotion. He goes from the third assistant basically to Doug Marrone to a tight ends coach and a full-time position coach with Pittsburgh. So the little things like that could possibly pop up. I'm not expecting anything major like at the coordinator level or anything like that beyond the core promotion, but I don't think Josh McDaniels is going anywhere. I don't think Jeremy Springer is going anywhere. But you never know on the periphery, some of those lower level assistants that might get opportunities elsewhere.
Evan, I'm so glad you brought up his name, Josh McDaniels, because loud mouths like me get paid to suggest, that was such a horrendous game plan in the Super Bowl when your quarterback's hurt. Will Campbell clearly wasn't himself and needed some damn help. You didn't give him any. There was no creativity in the run game. It was a mess offensively. And so loudmouths like me say, well, you got to do something with Josh McDaniels. After all, he was inherited by Mike Vrabel. That's not a Vrabel guy. Can you speak to me about your thoughts of not only Josh McDaniels' game plan in the Super Bowl, his 10th, Evan? Okay, he's been there before. I thought we'd see something better, but just his future with the team. Do you see him here for many, many years with Drake May?
I do, and I think we can't lose sight of the fact that he was just named the assistant coach of the year a week ago before they played in the Super Bowl. But I'm fully with you in terms of the Super Bowl itself, and I've been pretty critical on our shows of Josh McDaniels because I just felt like they went in there, and especially against some of the blitzes that they saw from Seattle in this game, you have to have a plan when it comes to pressure of like, how are you going to handle the blitz? Like, are you going to try to bring blockers in and check protections and do that thing, or are you going to try to throw hot behind the blitzes and try to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands? Like, either way, there's a million different ways, I'm sure, but those are the two primary ways that you can do it. And either way works, but you just have to have a plan. So when Drake May sees them bringing that B-gap pressure where they just kept blitzing the slot corner over and over again, what's his check? What's his, hot route? What's his answer to that type of problem? And it just felt felt like they didn't have a lot of great answers to that. There's other couple things that I thought were somewhat disappointing, like the fact that they didn't use more sixth offensive linemen. Like, they call it one time, they complete a 21-yard pass, they never go back to it.
Right.
They only ran it 13 times in this game when Ramondre Stevenson was cooking all playoff long. So there was a lot of second guesses from my point of view as well. Now, the one thing that I will come back to, though, in Josh's defense, and Jason McCourty, I thought, summed this up really nicely on one of his a million shows that he does recently, when he said that this is year one, and it's a young quarterback. They have 2 rookie starters on the offensive line. Even guys like veteran players like Stephon Diggs have never played in this system before. Right. So is it possible that their just library of plays just isn't that big yet? And they just don't have a lot of different things to pivot to, like a team like the Patriots with Tom Brady, who had a decade of experience with Josh McDaniels, where they could just say, hey, let's do this, let's do that. So hopefully with a year further along in the system, and that's something that Drake May said, in his final press conference on Tuesday, is that he's really looking forward to being in the same offense again next year, and hopefully he can grow and develop within the system. And I think that's the hope, so that next time you face a defense like that, that's bringing a lot of pressure at you, you do have those answers next time around.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday, actually. Like, it's not being referred to enough that, like, Drake May has had to deal with such a carousel of OCs. So, I mean, regardless of what we agree or disagree on when it comes to the Super Bowl, giving this guy, to Adam's point, continuity, which he mentioned yesterday, is probably one of the best factors for Drake May moving forward. Not to move on from Drake May too quickly, but the larger conversation here has been Will Campbell. We've seen how personal he takes any result that he leaves on the field, whether it's really good or not so good. Right. He's very hard on himself, and a number of linemen have come out to kind of say, keep him at left tackle. He has the ability to be great there. He needs to be more aggressive, and in other words, tactful, so he can use that advantage that's there outside of the reach and everything else like that. What's your perspective on this? Because I know that there's going to be a divide up until we see a proven, let's say, flourished talent at left tackle for Will Campbell.
Yeah, I think that all the O-line guys have really nailed it with this. A lot of the things that you see with him, I think, are fixable in terms of his technique. Now, don't get me wrong, because of his dimensions, and it's not just the arm length, it's also the wingspan and the fact that he's just a narrower build at that position. He has to be a technician. Like, he's going to have to be an artist at that position to be able to really excel at left tackle. Now, I think that he can do it. And the main thing that I look at is, not to get too technical, but he uses a lot of vertical sets in the Super Bowl, meaning his first step is just straight backwards into the backfield. And when you do that, the idea is to create more space between you and the edge rusher so that you can square him up and keep him from getting on your edges. But the problem with that is it creates space in like a runway between Will Campbell and the blocker, or in the edge rusher, excuse me. So as that runway creates, like, that's when you get the power generated, the speed to power, and then the arm extension, and that's when he is getting bull rushed and pressed back into the quarterback. So a lot of these O-line guys, Teron Armstead kind of being the ringleader, are saying if he gets a little bit more aggressive in his pass sets and he goes out and gets the guys instead of waiting on them, that maybe he can be a little bit more effective. So it's like just little things like that he can tweak with his stance, with his pass set, with his technique, that I think can go a long way for him. And he's got that mentality, and he's got some functional play strength. He's just got to learn how to use it. And I think that's going to hopefully make him a better player. I also wouldn't be shocked if they start to think about moving Jared Wilson, further inside to center, maybe separating the two of those guys, putting kind of a veteran left guard between the two of them on that side of the offensive line to try to stabilize things a little bit. I think that could help a lot too. So if there's somebody that's going to get moved, I actually kind of more expect it to be Wilson than Campbell.
Wow.
Evan, in spite of 17 wins, there was still kind of a little engine that could element to this team, simply because talent was top heavy, right? It's Drake May, it's Christian Gonzalez. After that, there's not a lot of kind of household name recognition, and what comes along with that is there are a lot of areas of need. If you're pinpointing that top priority, be it free agency or in the draft, what needs to be addressed first?
I would say, this one's tough because it always depends on, what's available, right? Like, I would take the better player out of the wide receivers and out of the edge rushers. Like, I think those are the two spots that I look at. And I know they played great in the playoffs and the defense really turned up the pressure in the playoffs, but that's not exactly how we were talking about the edge position going into the postseason. They kind of figured out a formula with all the blitzing and stuff like that to start to generate pass rush in the playoffs that was very effective. But you put a guy like Max Crosby outside on this defensive line with Milton Williams and Christian Barmore rushing on the inside, and now you're really starting to build something there on the defensive line. So that's something that I would be extremely interested in, but I do think that they need to still upgrade the talent around Drake May. And I know everybody's going to harp on the offensive line, but I would say number one wide receiver, somebody on the outside that can really be a difference maker is something that they are going to have to strongly consider. And I'm not talking about drafting another flyer in the 3rd or 4th round, right? Like, we're talking about going to get a top dog like an AJ Brown or something like that they can go out and get. So even if Diggs is still here, like, having Diggs playing off of a guy like that is still going to be really dangerous. So when I looked at the playoffs and you look at what Houston did and what Denver did and what the Seattle did, of course, in the Super Bowl, you did feel like, they were kind of missing some star power at the receiver positions just a little bit.
Yeah, AJ Brown here. Max Crosby here.
Crosby right here.
You're going to make these two swoon, man.
Can we get both? Evan!
Stop being so selfish,
They got
Travis.
space.
Can we get both, Evan?
$40 million in cap
Evan,
space?
both are standing right in front of you.
Can we get
Who
both?
do you, Travis? You're
Can we
being
get both?
selfish. Just say Crosby.
I think both would be tough. I'm going to say Max Crosby. And the reason why I'm going to say Max Crosby is because I just can't get out of my head how much Mike Vrabel and Max Crosby would hit it off. Like, that's like the thing that I just can't.
The bromance that'll never end.
They probably need receiver more. They probably need the help on offense more, if we're being honest. But Max Crosby and Mike Vrabel are kindred spirits. Like, those two guys belong together. They're just two guys that love ball. That Max Crosby sets his alarm at 4:55 a.m. and is at the Raiders facility by 5:30 in the gym. Like, that's a Mike Vrabel program type of guy, and he's also a hell of a football player. So I just think the combination of those two things. Now, Vrabel did coach AJ Brown before, so maybe he's an AJ Brown guy too, but it just feels like it feel like Max Crosby's his type of guy. Like, that's just
in heaven.
Casey's in love.
I am.
Absolutely.
I'm in football love. Like, nobody
really
can talk
is.
me out of this. I offered for someone to start a GoFundMe.
She did.
I don't have much to give,
We're
but
gonna
whatever
contribute to the
Max
contract?
wants.
Yeah.
I will. Whatever Max wants, I'm in.
He's not getting any of my money.
Same. I'm in.
He's got plenty.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you.
He's got plenty.
Yeah, he's doing fine. So let's take it back to the quarterback here for a minute, Drake May, who, I think, let's call it 3/4 of the way through the year when he's actively in the MVP battle. You were hearing a lot of, well, Matthew Stafford should win it because his career's almost over, and Drake May's going to have plenty of time. He's 23 years old. Obviously, he loses the vote by just the one to Stafford. But by the end, after what was a turnover and sack-filled postseason, and you can point to the shoulder, lack of protection, whatever you want. The bottom line is the stats were not there. MVP Drake May was not there throughout the playoffs. Now you've got, some of the national pundits saying, well, maybe this guy isn't as good as we thought. What is your read on Drake May entering year 2 as a full-time starter?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't have any concerns about his ability to be a star franchise quarterback in the league. I think that book is already closed. Like, he's already one of those guys, right? And he's going to make the Patriots a good team for a while now, as long as he's upright and he is healthy. I think the one thing that you can hold against Drake maybe a little bit in the playoffs, I just saw a guy that wasn't quite as confident in his decision making as what we saw in the postseason. And there's a million reasons for that, whether that's, the opponent, the strength of opponent, what was going on around him. It's not just him. And I think all that other stuff is probably a bigger factor in his postseason drop off, the line play, the defenses he was facing, the weather in some of those games. But during the regular season, I just can't get out of my head just how almost arrogant he was at times, fitting the ball into tight windows, making throws down the field. Obviously his mobility and his play extension, him moving around the pocket, like all these different things that he did in the regular season. It just felt like we got a little bit more of a timid version of Drake May in the postseason, and maybe some of that had to do with the fact that he was getting beat up by the Chargers, the Texans, and the Broncos, and then eventually Seattle. So I think it's hard to have that kind of confidence when it's not going right like it was in the regular season. But I just can't keep going back in my head just thinking about some of the throws he made in the regular season that were into tight windows, that were into competitive coverage, and he's just putting the ball wherever he wants it, whenever he wants it. And we didn't see that kind of freedom from him of just letting it loose like we did in the regular season in the playoffs. And my guess is that the the turnovers, snowballing in him a little bit, probably just made him overall a more conservative player. And unfortunately, when they got to Seattle, they needed him to be Superman Drake May, like against that defense. They needed him to be an MVP, and he just wasn't able to do it. But even the throw to Matt Collins, in the fourth quarter on the touchdown drive there, that 24-yard in cut where he just throws it between four guys on Seattle, like those were the types of throws he needed to make like 4 or 5 times in the Super Bowl for them to have a chance, and he just wasn't able to do it.
Evan Lazar, again, Patriots senior writer, and of course hosts the Catch-22 podcast. Thank you very much, sir. Something tells me we'll be bugging you during the offseason as well.
Anytime. Looking forward to it.
All right, again, Evan Lazar, and lots to build upon, obviously.
Max Crosby is what.
Max Crosby,
fantastic,
A.J. Brown.
Thank you, Evan.
You know what? We're going to challenge these two because a little bit later in the show, we're going to start to formulate our Patriots offseason wish list. And you're not allowed to say Crosby or Brown. We're going to each give you
It's
someone
simple. I'm right.
that we really, really, I hope they get both. I'm rooting for both of you.
I know, I want both.
Both of
I'd
y'all
be
stop.
happy. Be very happy if the Patriots come away with either of those guys, let alone the pair. When we come back, though, we're going to go to some Celtics talk. Yesterday, we had Sean Grandy on with us, got into a little bit of Jason Tatum's future. Now it's time for us to look into the crystal ball and figure out when this dude's coming back. Tomorrow? Is tomorrow okay?